George Russell, Mercedes can't solve porpoising problems this year. It has been the 9th time that Mercedes F1 tried to fix their porpoising problems. In a weekend where the FIA announced to punish teams for porpoising, Mercedes brought new upgrades to fix their issues. Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton were positive that this would finally solve their issues. Mercedes brought a new floor that is stiffer and additional slots have been added to the floor. However, as soon as George Russell and Lewis Hamilton fired up their cars, it became evident that the roller coaster ride hasn't ended yet. With the still existing back pains from both drivers, every weekend seems to add a bit more to it. There is only so much a body can handle, and every time the drivers are set for some laps, they prepare for the worst. George Russell now openly acclaims that Mercedes can't solve their porpoising problems for this year. He said that he doesn't believe Mercedes is capable to bring forth any changes to this current no-side pod design that will help with porpoising. What was once such a mighty and dominant team is now struggling to develop not only a race-winning car, but a drivable car. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Racing Guru. Lewis Hamilton was frequently complaining about the lack of drivability after implementing the updates. He wondered whether it were upgrades or downgrades. It is another reason to believe that not all updates are working and that the data from the simulators are not always matching those on track. Hamilton had significantly more oversteer than his teammate George Russell, who was experimenting with a completely different setup. After 9 races, both drivers are used to being their team's guinea pigs. With the lack of testing capabilities this year, the budget cap, and the limited simulator time, every minute on track counts. However, after last testing session, Hamilton was vocal about the test. Both George and I drove with a different setup during the practice sessions to find out which direction would be best suited for our car. I haven't heard from him yet, but my car was a disaster. Everything we seem to do to this car either won't work or makes things worse. Hamilton continues by saying that he believes this is the car they just have to make it to the end with. We should put our focus on next year and build a better car. His teammate George Russell agrees with Hamilton's statement and adds, "The stiffness of these cars are insane. We can't attack the curbs like we once did with the previous generation cars. We already set up the suspension in the softest way possible, but nothing we do seems to work." Meanwhile, the gap between Mercedes and the top teams seems to grow ever larger. What is even more troubling for Mercedes is the competitiveness of the other teams. Earlier in the season, Aston Martin stole the headliners by copying Red Bull's concept. Aston Martin, previously known as Racing Point, was already known for its pink Mercedes, which was almost identical to the Mercedes car. In 2022, they pulled another trick by copying Red Bull's car. After a very troubling start, they do manage to find their way to the front. 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel is now regularly found in the top 10, whereas he first had to fight at the back of the field. This does fuel Mercedes' decision to give up on the no-side pod car and develop a car with conventional side pods that work, especially after the FIA now basically banned porpoising, claiming that teams who do experience porpoising need to increase the height of the car. Mercedes needs to make a decision. George Russell is one of the most talented drivers in F1, and with potential exits to happen in the next 2 years, Russell will have more options to switch to a team that does offer a competitive and drivable car. The porpoising effect with the Mercedes cars is that they experience more G-force on straights than in corners. The porpoising becomes even more extreme once cars exceed 250 kilometers an hour, and the Venturi effect really starts to pull the cars downwards. When this happens, the car comes up again, but because the car still exceeds speeds of over 250 kilometers an hour, the car is straight away sucked to the ground again. This process repeats itself over and over again until the cars have to brake for a corner. George Russell already said that he can't believe that Red Bull developed such a competitive and drivable car while fighting for 2021's championship. However, he did forget to mention that top designer Adrian Newey wrote a whole thesis about the Venturi effect many years ago. The repetitive claims from Russell, Hamilton, and Toto Wolff backfired even more when the FIA changed the rules not to gain Mercedes an advantage, but rather a disadvantage. The FIA wants to support the teams that have porpoising under control, while punishing the teams that don't. This completely was not what Mercedes expected to happen, making their problems even bigger. Russell has always been an advocate of Mercedes and still supports them, but every time he gets interviewed, you can see the frustration in his face. Russell never expected to struggle so much as a Mercedes driver while coming from the much smaller Williams team. Russell was used to struggle with the Williams cars, knowing that it would come to an end when moving to Mercedes. Now, with the drastic regulation changes, it seems that Russell is in another Williams situation again. What doesn't help is the reduced simulator time and budget cap that is hurting the Mercedes team the most. 2020 was the last year that teams could use unlimited resources to develop their cars. This gave the bigger teams such an advantage over smaller teams that there wasn't much of a championship battle with multiple teams. Therefore, the FIA and teams decided that in 2021 and onwards, teams could only spend a maximum of $145 million a year on the development and expenses of the team. The teams also agreed that teams with the most constructors' points should get lesser amounts of simulator time. This would help the smaller teams catch up with the bigger ones. Ironically enough, it is Mercedes that first experiences the impact of these new regulations. As the 2021 Constructors' Champions, they get the least amount of simulator time of all teams. Luckily for them, this changes on July 1st, as the FIA will look at the current standings to determine new simulator times. However, George Russell doesn't believe in an outcome where they win a race pure on performance. He recalls that he still thinks they are the third fastest team after Red Bull and Ferrari, but that he needs to be lucky that either the weather or the drivers ahead of him make a drastic mistake. So far, Mercedes has tried every single bit possible to overcome their porpoising problems. They made their floor stiffer, they increased ride height, added additional slots to the car, and yet, nothing helps. Both Mercedes drivers are getting more frustrated and more vocal about their problems. Already, do both drivers think they have to forget about this year and have Mercedes focus all their resources on next year's car? What do you think? Do you think Mercedes is capable of overcoming the porpoising problems? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Racing Guru.